Every game franchise has that one entry that is commonly considered to be the best in the series. Stuff like Ocarina of Time, Super Metroid, and Final Fantasy VII are good examples of this. However, there will always be people who disagree and will insist that a different game is the best. But there's something about Sonic 3 that's different. It has a very high status. It's almost always considered the best original Sonic game, if not the best Sonic game period. Now, I haven't had much experience with Sonic 3 until this video. So as you would imagine, I came into this game with some high expectations, and who could blame me? I hear nothing but great things about this game. So, does this game live up to the ridiculous hype? Alright, you know what? I'm just gonna lay my cards on the table right now. I think this game is kind of overhyped. Do I think Sonic 3 is bad? No, not in the slightest. I think this game is pretty good. It's just not as good as it's sometimes made out to be. So let's discuss the positives and negatives of Sonic 3. Let's begin. First off, when I say Sonic 3 in this video, I'm referring to the full, complete version of the game. Well, originally, the game was released in 2 parts because it was too big to fit on a Genesis cartridge without it being more expensive. The first half was simply called Sonic the Hedgehog 3, while the second half was called Sonic and Knuckles. But you could literally attach the 2 cartridges together to get the entire game, utilizing Sega's so-called lock-on technology, which was interestingly used exclusively with this game, and that's a shame. It would have been cool to see other games use it. For this review, I was playing the fan-made version known as Sonic 3 Complete, which adds a bunch of extra features on top of the main game. There's also Sonic 3 A.I.R, which adds 60 FPS gameplay and widescreen, which could alleviate some of the visibility issues present in the game. I could really recommend both, so it's up to you. The game begins with Sonic and Tails arriving on Angel Island, but they're soon stopped by Knuckles the Echidna, who then proceeds to take the Chaos Emeralds, since he was tricked by Robotnik into thinking Sonic is looking to steal the Master Emerald. So it's your job to stop him, as well as did Dr. Robotnik. You periodically run into Knuckles throughout the game where he'll get in the way of your journey. By the end, you actually fight the Echidna,
oh no!
But Robotnik actually turns against him, and so you team up with Knuckles to stop him. So why am I bothering with story all of a sudden? Well, it's just because the story is much more prominent this time around. It's simple, of course, but the way it's told is pretty great. You slowly see events unfold throughout the game with no dialogue, and there are several cutscenes that make the experience more grand. There are tons of memorable moments in Sonic 3, such as Angel Island Zone getting set on fire, and towards the end of the game, it gets pretty tense. I especially like how each zone cleanly transitions into one another. It really makes the world feel cohesive and interconnected. All these cinematic elements, while minimal, they really make the game more memorable overall, and I really enjoy the added flair. It really feels like you're going on an adventure. And all this is further heightened by the stellar soundtrack. Now, it's not as good as Sonic CD, but it's still really good. The songs have that catchy and upbeat feel that Sonic is known for, and they each fit their respective zones very well. Have a listen. And now you can somewhat thank Michael Jackson for these tunes. It's not entirely known what exactly he did to the soundtrack, but we do know this. He approached Sega to work on the music, however he ended up being dissatisfied with the Genesis sound quality. And this also happened when the allegations against him were rolling in, so Sega and Michael drifted apart. But many of Jackson's crew members stayed behind with Sega to make the game's music, so it still has his influence. As for the game's level design, it's pretty solid for the most part. But the best part about it is how it perfectly balances speed, platforming, and exploration together. Most zones are pretty big, but they don't feel big whatsoever. While Sonic CD's zones felt very bloated and over-designed, while Sonic 3's feel dense and thought through. Pathways flow and overlap each other, and exploration is both encouraged and optional. You can play through the zones with the intention of just getting to the goal, but you could also go out of your way to find elemental shields and special stage entrances. I'm personally not a fan of these special stages. You have to turn all the blue spheres into red spheres while avoiding all the other red spheres. These stages are kinda nauseating and can be hard to tell what you're doing since you move automatically and everything just blends it together visually. Although I do like how you access them. You can find them hidden away in all the zones, and you don't need any rings to get in them. As for the elemental shields, they're basically power-ups for Sonic. The fire shield lets you dash through the air and makes you immune to fire. The water shield lets you bounce up and down and breathe underwater. And the electric shield gives you a double jump and attracts rings towards you. These are all pretty fun to use and are very useful in various situations. Now, all this sounds great on paper, but a lot of the zones in Sonic 3 are just mediocre. Not bad, just kinda meh. Zones like Marble Garden, Mushroom Hill, and Sandopolis didn't really leave an impression on me at all. They're by no means bad, they're fine zones, but they can get pretty dull. Sandopolis especially. It involves a lot of slow block pushing that break the pace of the level. Mushroom Hill has this kind of pace issue as well. You'll constantly have to use these pulleys to access different parts of the zone, which just involve repeatedly pressing one button over and over and over again. It's just pointless. I also felt like there were several beginner's traps in some of the zones. For example, in Marble Garden, there are several hazards that will often catch you off guard. On top of that, I felt like sudden crush deaths were a bit more common in this entry, and it really got on my nerves because I'd have to redo a portion of the zone over again, and it would start to wear on me. Well, that was certainly negative, but those are my honest thoughts. I'm not going to praise this game for the sake of agreeing with popular opinion. And most of the zones aren't too great. They either leave me feeling frustrated, annoyed, or empty. However, when Sonic 3 gets good, it gets really good. So why don't we take a look at one of my favorite zones in the game, Ice Cap. I feel like this is the high point of the game in terms of level design. It has this excellent blend of speed and platforming that feels seamless. You'll be sliding down a long slope one moment and be challenged with some fast-paced platforming in the next. It also has level gimmicks that not only blend in well, but also enforce momentum instead of diminishing it. Ice Cap also showcases a bit of spectacle with the iconic snowboarding entrance, the never-ending slide, and you having to sled down on a block of ice. This zone has such a smooth pace that just keeps going and it's all great. It's honestly one of the best levels in the entire classic series. So it was a pretty big disappointment when I entered Launch Base Zone. While it's not a bad stage, it was a bit of a step down from Ice Cap, which just made it even more jarring. I was just thinking, why couldn't I have more of this and less of that? In fact, I think I know what my biggest gripe with this game is, and that's inconsistency. There are high points, low points, and some points that fall in the middle. This game has issues and I'm not willing to deny them. Occasional dull gameplay, surprise hazards, glitches, annoying level gimmicks, it's all here. Sonic 3 just isn't perfect in my eyes. Is it because I'm inexperienced? Is it because I didn't grow up with it? Or maybe all the hype affected my opinion in the end? Now, that could be the case. I was a little disappointed with this entry, and that could be my own fault for going in with such high expectations. Now, I want to stress again that this is not a bad game by any stretch of the word, but the whole "this is the best Sonic game" idea is not something I personally agree with. I have my personal favorite entries, and so can you. But Sonic 3 does have a ton of good qualities to it. It has an amazing soundtrack, the storytelling expanded the scope of the game, the boss fights are pretty creative, and it does have some truly amazing levels. The HYDROCITY, Ice Cap, Flying Battery, and some of Launch Base are pretty great. I even really liked Lava Reef, which has a bit of a slower pace, but it was still a very engaging stage. I do think that this is probably one of the better Sonic games out there. It's definitely one of the more polished entries for sure, and it has a very solid level design overall, even if there are a number of issues. And granted, they might not bother you as much, but I still thought a lot of them could have been easily alleviated. It was certainly an interesting experience playing this game through. I may disagree with popular opinion, but I still mostly enjoyed myself. Sonic 3 lays down a great foundation for 2D Sonic, but the game just didn't quite meet its full potential. But there is a game that takes the foundation of Sonic 3 and perfects it. Sonic Mania. This is the best, most consistently fun classic-style Sonic game in my opinion. It has great level design, fantastic visuals, and an excellent soundtrack. But I'll go more in depth once the eventual review rolls around in the far future. So in the end, I guess the moral of the story is to always keep your expectations in check, no matter the amount of hype.